Now we are back to our forum. Why am I saying this? Because we will now launch our first important discussion, which is physical literacy essential for good quality life. But how can we implement it? How do we act upon it? Everybody knows that it's essential, but what do we have to do? What do we miss? How should we work together and share our experience? And we will try and speak about that. Three very important individuals are going to participate in this discussion, and I would like to introduce them to you when we see them on the screen. I will lead you on the idea of the discussion. The topic of the discussion was generated by dangerously low physical literacy indicators, and the most important issue is that this affects the emotional health, and we have a new generation growing who, due to the lack of movement, obesity, may live shorter lives with and may lead a less quality life and would be unhappy. Therefore, physical literacy offers a different approach to physical education. And it speaks about motivation, self-confidence, the movement skills, understanding the responsibility for everybody to be physically active and to develop that throughout their lives. Therefore, this responsibility that an individual via physical literacy would find in internal motivation rather than ask who should motivate me, would make an individual understand that it's them who are responsible. And I believe that physical literacy is necessary for everybody. We agree that it should be developed from early years, but what should we do to make the society more physically healthy and more physically literate, and how could everybody contribute to that? I would like to invite all our discussion participants, and we will have the following participants: President of the National Committee, Olympic Committee of Lithuania, Daina Gudzineviciute, the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Education and Science and Sport, Linas Obcarskas, and Simona Bieliune, advisor to the Minister of Health of the Republic of Lithuania. And I would like to thank you very much for participating in this discussion and agreeing to speak about the topics which are not easy, because realistically we are still yet only looking for solutions to this concept. And physical literacy is new to many, and I am so delighted, and I would like to ask you to express your opinions, and let's try to look at all sides. I have a number of questions ready for you. Let us start with the following. Now, physical activity. I have question number one, Ms. Daina. Where is the secret idea? Why did you start to organize this Olympic Education Forum on this subject?
Hello again. Well, this question is rather strange indeed, because all Olympic education fora are more or less focused not only on developing values, but also on developing physical activity. And perhaps today, if we were to ask a passerby on the street what is Olympic Committee doing, the answer would be they are trying to make sure that our athletes win medals. But this movement is really much wider than that. We care about how our children are growing up. not only about whether they will become great athletes to win Olympic medals in the future. And coming back to physical activity, probably those of you who are interested know that the Directorate of the Forum and our Olympic Foundation is active in physically educating the smallest of our citizens, for example, the children's games, preschool education activities. We have the Olympic Week, and hopefully this will evolve into an even wider project of school Olympic Games. Children do want to be physically active from the very early age, but there is a lack of physical literacy. It is not enough just to buy a bicycle. If a child can't ride a bike, the bicycle will be of no use. Physical literacy, we believe, should be developed from the very early age, because children spend 12 years at school and in the kindergarten when all their skills are being formed. It is very important. Teachers and educators who take part in this forum today, or not only teachers, but people who work in kindergartens and the administration as well, should take a note of this and get inspired by this and think about how to implement this. Yes, the children of my generation preferred to spend their free time outside, whereas the current young generation cannot get out because there are a lot of interesting devices indoors. Daina, our activist, said during the General Assembly of the Olympic Committee, what should we do if children after school are not fit for military service? It doesn't mean that military service is a necessity, but the fact that they are not fit for military service indicates that they are not very healthy. And this young generation is not going to become very healthy if we do nothing. So that is the purpose, among others, of this discussion, how to find ways of cooperation to change the situation. Thank you. Thank you, Daina. And I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. Daina Gudzineviciute, everybody knows that. Well, you can address me by family name if you want to. Okay. Really interesting ideas. We will elaborate on them later on. We will not do your work for you, but we have gathered here today to get inspired by ideas. We are living through a difficult period full of challenges. Even without COVID-19, we were already about to achieve higher mobility and physical activity. And this situation, the pandemic, has thrown us back and stalled this positive development. And now I'd like to ask you, what is your perspective on the impact of the pandemic on the changes of human physical activity? From your personal perspective, what are your thoughts about the possible impact of on the physical activity of this difficult year? Well, if I may, I will first of all say that all of our proverbs are very correct and astute. So on the one hand, we have grown together even more with our devices. But when 2 years ago we all could meet in the Žalgiris arena, but the starvation for movement is very obvious as well. So maybe this deprivation of movement will serve as an impetus later on. Let me join by saying that On the one hand, we are talking about the use of screens, the time spent by the screen among adults and children, and this is not satisfactory. We are talking about emotional eating. We succumb to stress and tension because of the pandemic and because of the conditions that we have to work and spend time with children at home, that we have to juggle various roles at the same time. But on the other hand, I wouldn't say that the pandemic, in terms of physical activity, has been only bad, because just recently the Ministry of Health has conducted a survey where people were interviewed about various experiences, emotions concerning the COVID disease. And people were asked about how they are trying to help themselves. And I believe that this statistics was very surprising. Quite a lot of respondents said that while experiencing stress and anxiety, they go out to nature and are actively spend time in nature. They have discovered a lot of interesting locations around their home. And when we are so isolated and cannot move and travel around, we still feel the urge to move, and even a bigger urge. Now, for the second spring in a row, bicycle distributors and shops say that they fully sell out all their stocks. All of this shows that we are turning back to what is most available to us and how we can help ourselves. I'm happy that we are talking about this today as well, and also in other contexts. I believe that we need even more positive narratives, that first of all we have to take care of ourselves and our children and adolescents who, together with us, have changed their physical activity habits. Simona, probably you would agree that COVID has slowed us down somewhat, and we have discovered time to listen in to ourselves. And this is quite a natural urge to escape these limitations in the home, and this has awakened our intuition that movement means freedom. That is our salvation in this critical situation. Well, I would stress that there is no unique answer to all, because it depends where you work and what you do during the pandemic. Those who are in the front lines use physical activity to reduce stress, but a lot of people have started exercising at home, and the need for physical literacy has grown even further, because if people try to be physically active but exceed their capability, they can have a negative experience and abandon the physical activity, because it makes them feel not so good. So I believe it's even more important now to speak about the fact that any physical activity has to be attractive and comfortable, and one can start with small steps. So all the apps and videos that are accessible should be used according to their purpose, so that people get more motivation and not vice versa, decide that physical activity is not for them. I believe that people have to be educated on that as well. I'm happy to hear positive moods, that COVID is not only a big tragedy. Mr. Linas, maybe you would like to share with us your perspective on COVID and the relation of COVID and physical activity. Well, of course, it is believed that a crisis is both about big losses and big opportunities. I am inclined to think more that it's more about losses. Of course, we have discovered opportunities to individually exercise at home, but this cannot replace fully fledged physical activities. Physical literacy, physical literacy opportunities are more, we discover more activities. However, the impact is definitely negative. The ministers of sports of the countries of the Council of Europe have voiced their concern about the deteriorating physical and emotional status of societies. So indeed, we have discovered something new, but we still have lost much more. This is my opinion, and we will have to compensate this. Thank you very much. You have mentioned that, and we all in fact know that physical activity among different age groups is very beneficial to physical and mental health of people. It's a medicine, and there are numerous evidence on this. Physical activity is indeed a natural medicine, a natural remedy for people. And here I would very much wish that this prescription could become, would be promoted by the Ministry of Health, because our people have a lot of trust in their doctors. And if doctors recommend to be physically active, this would mean a lot. Ms. Simona, what are your ideas about the possibilities of the Ministry of Health to promote this natural remedy among us even more? Well, I believe that in theory we can say that many of these provisions are already set forth in our legislation and as recommendations as well. But because of the lack of real contact, this becomes very complicated, because recommendations and advice is most efficient when it is delivered directly face to face. And within the limits of our competence, health specialists working at school play an important role. They could be and are very excellent examples of physical activity, and the integration at schools and the possibility to move and the friendly environment at schools is very welcome and promoted in the education format. In order to promote physical activity, all specialists in the area of education, they prepare plans and strategies about what conditions are necessary to motivate children to move more. And there is a link even between children misbehaving and the lack of sports equipment. And for example, formal education activities have to be mixed by informal education activities to improve the overall balance. Doctors and doctor advice are also very important among working age population, because a lot of people have a sedentary job. There are a lot of offices who have strategies and programs in place whereby they offer their staff various physical activity opportunities during the day. So I think that this education has become a reality in many places, and employers understand how important physical activity at work is. But of course, we still need to do more in other areas so that breaks and physical activity at work would be promoted, and that this would become not only the responsibility of people themselves, but on the employer. In terms of physical and mental health, the elderly are also an important group, because physical activity has a direct impact on chronic diseases and dementia, etc., especially conditions characteristic of old age. And here again, I'd like to mention public health offices that have special programs designed for our senior citizens. And we treat this part of the society as a separate target group. Actually, they are among the most motivated groups that tend to be greatly involved in various activities. And I'd like to mention the social recipe, social prescription, which is about active leisure, inclusive pastimes that promote physical activities and various tools to promote that. So other countries also have the good experience with the social prescription that when we prescribe an activity and explain why and how it is important to our health and how to get it free of charge. So I believe that there is still a lot of room for improvement, and we have ideas on how to improve physical literacy, but when we're talking about problems, I always think about what still has to be done. So opportunities both at school, in the workplace, and among family doctors are still plentiful. And I do hope that we will continue on the same direction. Thank you very much for this in-depth reply. Indeed, quite often we discuss with our colleagues when we try to motivate different age groups, and we notice that often our motivation projects and ideas are much easier among those who have an athletic identity, who have maybe grown up in an athletic environment. But the problem is how to reach out to those who sit on the sofas at home. Because a journalist once asked me, Simona, but you see all parks and other places are overcrowded, so Lithuania is active. But then I told her, can you see how many more of them are still in their flats sitting on their sofas? So what are your ideas about how we could reach out to those people who don't know that they have to move, and how to motivate them? I do not want to take too much floor, but as a mother, I can say that children by nature are very active, and it's very important to create conditions for them to be active. But the grown-ups example is very important as well. We have to involve them in our activities together. And let us come back to the fact that when we want our family members and children behave in a certain way, we have to show them the example, our own example. So this is a simple response that each of us are responsible for setting this example. And another idea that comes to mind is that when we engage in physical activity, the hormone of happiness is being produced. The challenge is how to present sports in an attractive way, allowing people to try it out and feel the pleasure that physical activity brings. And then perhaps we could expect that once they've tried, they will want to come back again. So I believe that it is very important that physical activities should be as varied as possible and as accessible as possible, even free of charge.
Maybe you would tell us about yourself. Well, I hope that Vice Minister will excuse me for jumping in front of him, but I will continue Simona's idea. This example with the bike is very relevant. Well, when I started learning the bike, it was the rural bike, and then I did sports, and then I had some physical training, and now 10 years later, I actually had the chance to go to a shop on a bike, and I don't have a bike because I have not learned to ride a bike just for the need of sports. And now, when we learn to play badminton or ball or go cycling or doing skateboarding and so on, then you just may look out of the window and start thinking, oh, fine, I can do this or that, because I know everything. That's why I would like to go back to the physical literacy and activity. If we speak about health, if my doctor says that go riding the bike, I might start thinking, well, it's too late now. The same may be true about the elderly people who have always only taken the trolley bus in Vilnius. Why should they start riding the bike? Because they will be afraid to fall down and break their legs. And now let's see at the elderly people in rural countries. For instance, my grandpa is 80 years old, and he used to ride a bike every day with 2 containers of milk, while my mom, having lived in cities all their lives, have not learned to ride the bike. People have to be physically literate, and we have to encourage them. We have to tell them that it's the happiness hormone, that this is the happiness and the health and so on. And we probably speak about the most important things, that is young people who are still just forming their habit of doing sports, and then they will acquire the willingness to do sports. And of course, if they want to choose a certain sports and do mastership in sports, why not? And those who have already tried it, they will go and do the sports professionally. But there are so many people who don't aspire for mastership. And where is the limit, the line between the amateur and grassroots sports and mastership, professional sports? And now we are speaking about the very youngest children. We have to start speaking to the youngest children who probably sometimes don't even know how to speak, but they already know how to tap their phones. So maybe we should encourage them to play the ball. Thank you, Daina. These are live examples. Mr. Linas, maybe you would like to jump in with your experience. Oh, yes, of course. I would like to agree with Daina that physical literacy is extremely important, and here we are saying about speaking about the physical literature culture, and it's very important. If you want to move, you may go to work or school on a bike, and yes, changes happen in this respect. But having come on a bike, we do have to have the possibility to lock it safely, maybe have a shower. We need to invest some time, and we know that this is necessary, and we know that this is important. And the main audience of physical literacy are young people, because they will be solving the major tasks. And if we formulate the physical activity culture, if we shape it, many issues will get solved. And I hope that the health system will not be overloaded, and there will be physically fit young people to go and serve in the army and so on. I think that this infrastructure is really the infrastructure should be attractive, and this should be the pillar to base on the culture of sports among young people. Thank you. We have to understand that many people hear this motivation that physical literacy produces health hormones. Everybody knows that, but it doesn't mean that they act upon it. That's why we need to enable physical literacy in ourselves so that we have the responsibility and motivation. Because people say that they can't find the motivation, and when the knowledge is there, the knowledge may be applied, and that will generate results. Because Mr. Linas has stopped speaking, I would like to address another question to you directly. This is related to physical education classes. They are defined in the law on sports, and the level to which preschool children and school children have to move. Do you believe that the current number of physical education classes is sufficient? And do you think this influences the overall physical activity indicators? Now, if this were realistically implemented, that is 3 lessons per week, that would be sufficient. But this does not ensure full physical activity, because we should also have the non-formal development systems, and maybe we could just give the initial knowledge about doing sports, moving outside classes. And we have this situation with 3 physical education classes, that realistically we will probably be able to implement that only in 2023 on the 1st of September, because this is related to teachers' salaries and the necessary infrastructure. Of course, physical literacy should be ensured through these classes. That is, children should acquire the desire to do sports, and their priorities should be shaped, and it should be proven to young children and school children that you will only be able to achieve happiness in this way. How do we achieve that? The school curricula is being amended at the moment. I have a very detailed table and report about the actions being taken. To summarize, we would like to achieve that by 2023 the lessons take place everywhere, and that of course, dancing classes may replace the physical activity classes. We had a very quick 3-minute meeting where it was decided to have 3 physical activity classes, and this changed. By this, we comply with the law. The 3 classes may be enough for physical literacy, but it doesn't make a person physically active. This is just a basis, and this would just motivate an individual and would introduce an individual to physical activity possibilities. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have one overall idea and question addressed to every one of you. We are saying that the renewed general education curricula outline healthy lifestyle as one of the main competencies, but in practice we know that the physical education classes are not yet that important as mathematics or the native language. Sometimes Parents do not want their children to do sports themselves. For instance, it's too cold or too warm, or the child has just had a disease, and doctors write dismissal certificates for certain children. We understand that physical activity classes, physical education classes should be adapted to everyone's possibilities. How do you view the future of physical education classes? How to prevent it from becoming a Cinderella, occupying a Cinderella role? How to prevent skipping physical education classes due to certain festivities or so on? So, could it be achieved that maybe child needs a tutor for physical education, not only mathematics or native language, because parents see that their child is lagging behind the others, and not only in terms of physical data, but also physical movement knowledge or physical literacy, because it actually builds the person's life quality. Well, I am not a doctor, I do not have the education degree, and I used to be the one who would skip physical education classes all the time, although I actually was already doing doing sports actively. Why? I used to do that because it was boring, first of all, and back in those times we did not have the changing rooms, showers, and that physical education class was really somewhere at the very end. But therefore, I do not imagine how the education system should look like. But I have a rhetorical question. In the Google times, in the computer times, do we really need so many physics, chemistry, or mathematics classes that our children have nowadays? My easiest class was geometry, because everything was very clear, and I used to work as a drawer, but I don't need to repair for instance, phone, because I would simply buy another one. I think that today's generation is in a very unfavorable situation, because they lack certain subjects like ethics and morale and physical literacy, in order to understand that our body is just as important as the physics class, which should not be missed. I don't blame anyone, because I know that the education system is outdated. It comes from the back times, from the old times, and it's very probably difficult to compare it with chemistry or other classes where children actually spend lots of their time. But I used to be a professional sportswoman for many years, a professional athlete, and there are so many people who are doing sports at any age. I don't feel the representative of a young generation, but we have the small children's Olympic games, and what motivates them to move forward, to compete, their willingness to compete. If you play badminton with your friend, you are delighted that you have won, and I see the veterans who used to play basketball previously, and we used to mock at them that their club is their hopelessness or the last hope. But they used to say, well, but I have won against you. I am a pensioner and you are young, and it was still important for them. I think that it's very important to try out as many possible sports as possible. Why am I not a sambo specialist? And Linas has never tried shooting, because I have never tried sambo. Maybe I have it in my genes. Well, we have to test things, as much as possible, to test various competitions. If we do not if we cannot make it via physical education classes, let us do that via after class activities like the small children's games or small lessons. I, for instance, never attended the American school, but I can see how they are speaking. For instance, this is the class championship, this is the inter-school championship, and so on. And I remember when the 6th grade used to come together to support our own school competing against others, because they were awarded for that. And I remember we had a project that was launched, the Olympic Week, which later turned into the Olympic Month, and together in cooperation with the ministries and other establishments, we can come up with such activities that would encourage to make movement more interesting, so that children want to compete. And the motivation may be various. For instance, school competitions, for instance. In Kėdainiai we have the health school. They have the Olympic Day. I went there, and I went there in the winter time, and children were half naked outside, and they didn't feel cold, because they have been doing that for many years, and they are delighted to get together on that day. Maybe we can fill the gaps with our joint efforts.
If I may, I would like to chip in and ask others' opinion. We have also a question, and a very practical one, that is related to what Ms. Daina said before. So this is a practical question, and it seems to be simple, but it is very, very important to someone. A lot of school children, especially in higher grades, don't want to train, to engage in sports, because there is no facilities to take a shower. There is too short time to change. So what about hygiene? How can we expect them to happily go to a physical training lesson if they have no chance to take a shower or change? So who is responsible for installing enough showers in the changing rooms, or to have a longer break after the PE lesson? Let me try to answer, because this question is greatly related to the system of education. The showers will not appear out of the blue. They will have to be installed. Premises will have to be found. Funds need to be found, as well as time. As I said, infrastructure has to be in place, because if children have no opportunity to take a shower and leave their belongings safely somewhere in the lockers, they will not be too willing to do that. Now we have a program about renewing playgrounds around schools. Maybe this program should be extended so as to include the shower facilities and other auxiliary facilities. I am fully aware of the situation, that during this short break it is problematic for the children to change, and schools would have to then adjust their schedules to allow more time for changing and taking a shower. This is a sore problem that needs to be solved, and the fact is that the showers will not appear themselves. We'll need time and resources for that. Let me add from another perspective. I believe that when we talk about practical things such as breaks and showers, Provisions are very important. And when we speak about schools, we mostly speak about the fact that the main focus is on academic achievements, that children must acquire a certain amount and level of knowledge. We are competing with other countries in terms of reading and calculation and writing skills. And this has been going on for many years. And today we have to identify to ourselves that first and foremost the child has to feel good physically and emotionally, and then their achievements will improve. So any problem, be it bullying or substance abuse, the issue of occupation and activity, active pastime, is very important. As the minister said, infrastructure, other practical issues are important. It is the responsibility of the ministry, but also of municipalities, to make sure that the conditions are in place. And also the members of school communities themselves need to be fully engaged in creating adequate conditions. Because I believe that when children feel good, their achievements will be better as well. The same goes for teachers. So we have to work with the approach, with the outlook. Sometimes when asked why they don't play basketball, teachers answer because the ball creates a lot of sound and we disturb other lessons. So we have to acknowledge to ourselves that sometimes we need only very little. So the role of community is very important as well, because active parents also could initiate a lot of possibilities and activities, both indoors and outdoors. So this is a complex approach, and I believe that we have to be true to ourselves. If we want to have achieving children, we have to consider the whole area of prevention, both physical activity and emotional. And children are happy when they have possibilities to move. That means that they have to have adequate conditions to run around, play around during breaks so that they can focus again during the lesson. So there are a lot of mini recipes, mini prescriptions that could be applied by schools individually. We have a comment, or rather a cry for help. Why on the websites of the Ministry of Health and Education there are so few guidelines about physical literacy and how to teach physical PE lessons in a quality way online? So teachers are lacking ideas and support and tools. What do you think? Would the Ministry of Education, Sports, or rather a more general question, could physical literacy become not only part of the PE lesson, because now it seems that physical literacy is important only to PE teachers and coaches, but would physical literacy could it become a part of the whole education system? What is your opinion on that, and how could you help teachers? Maybe Linas could reply. Thank you. The question is really topical. Why don't we provide guidelines on our website? We'll do our best. In the ministry, we have a pool of best practices and best experiences, and maybe we could share these best practices more. This is an operational solution, because we do have good practices. Some are doing better, some are doing worse. And now another question is very difficult as well, because physical literacy is, of course, directly related with lessons, PE lessons. but the knowledge should be imparted directly, but it is important that the entire system includes and develops the culture of physical activity. This approach needs to be changed. We have to discover more opportunities to arrange and structure and include them in other lessons, in other timetables, because biology is related to this, social sciences, etc. Really, the focus could go on those topics. That results will not be achieved. You cannot achieve good results if you are not physically active. So this could be presented through this prism. I don't think that it's likely that a separate theoretical subject of physical literacy could appear, but it could be incorporated in other modules and adapted. Could it be a could your ministry provide a reinforcement not only to PE teachers but to direct school directors, school principals, by encouraging them, inviting them to somehow, probably as you said, in the lessons of mathematics, it could be applied to calculation of movement, it could be applied in geography and biology, anywhere. But probably schools are still waiting, as is the tradition, to get instructions from above, and everybody's just waiting for it to come. And school principals, so as the school principals see the importance of physical literacy and its impact on our daily lives. So this is one of the requests and the comments. And the last question, again, a sore, painful question. Again, please don't get angry. It is directed to the Ministry of Education. This is the place to relieve our pain here. How to achieve that preschool institutions and primary schools have specialists educating about physical literacy and promoting physical activity, because we all know what is the situation with primary schools and preschool institutions. It is quite a sad situation. So what could you say on this? Yes, I fully agree, because these things are related. In order to have a physical education specialist, we have to take care about a lot of organizational matters, primarily funds and qualifications. Maybe in part it could be we could achieve this through merging certain preschool institutions, because then we could have a full-day job for a physical education specialist. But in other areas it could be more complicated, because if we have a preschool institution that is not large enough and the groups are not enough, there are not enough children, then they have to outsource a specialist, which is again expensive. But these expenses are equally important. So it is up to the approach of the management. This approach has to change, because only physically active and strong school children or children could have good learning achievements. Really, the workloads for school children are big, and it is difficult to compete with all the disciplines, all the subjects, because it would be rather problematic to introduce yet another subject of physical literacy. But this idea is really good. I believe that primarily we have to educate management and teachers in order for them to believe in the need of physical literacy, because it is only through them that we can shape and foster the culture of physical literacy. But again, this question is primarily related with, first of all, changing the culture and the management approach of the individual institution. They have to look for ways and means of hiring a specialist. And perhaps some of the institutions have to be merged into one so that they become bigger and can afford to hire physical literacy specialists. Yes, I'd like to corroborate to what Linas has said. We discussed this when we were preparing amendments to the law. PE specialists in preschool institutions are important. Big kindergartens can afford to hire one, but we have a lot of mini kindergartens that can't. There is always competition, and it will stay. Again, people can choose which kindergarten to put their child to. Again, we need recommendations submitted by serious and leading institutions. Maybe they will not be effective right away, but step by step, they will achieve the impact. The same situation is in other areas as well. In the sports area, we are discussing with our members about this as well. When we keep on recommending, some results can be achieved. So I fully agree with the recommendations because they are effective. And we also have to think about the approach. We have seen this too. Some kindergartens are very active participants in children's games, and other kindergartens are very passive in this. They are not motivated at all. So it is up to, when there is a wish, there is a way. And coercion is not the way forward, because forced sports is not about health. Yes, raising awareness is very important, because healthy living is not a prison. This is our biggest freedom that we all have. And now we have overstepped our lunch break limits. So one brief sentence. What is your outlook on the future? Which direction should we follow to make physical literacy part and parcel of everyone's life? Perhaps it's about the cooperation between different institutions. So a small resume from each of you. Well, I have brought with me to this event the concept of active school. In other countries, this model is very positive and promotes health and education together. To continually motivate and promote and create plans that would become part and parcel of the school's life. All these activities should become integral and well thought over. These are all needs of the community, and I believe if in the future we could make it a thing of prestige, about badges, about quality signs, that our school is an active school, and this status of an active school could become added value, about more opportunities to try out different sports or receive inventory and equipment, then school management and the community would become more motivated. And before this event, I thought that little has been done, but there are a lot of opportunities in this area. We should use the concept of an active school to make sports more attractive to children. A lot depends on our outlook. It's not enough to speak and recommend. We have to increase the motivation by other things, be it image or any other aspects that would help organize physical activities.
I would like to only agree with Simona and especially Daina's idea that events are the embellishment of the whole sports and they improve the prestige of movement. This is a possibility which has not been fully utilized. Maybe this would help create the image of an attractive school. And of course, we can organize more events. On the ministry's part, I believe that having a strong position on 3 strong classes per week and the development of infrastructure and inventory are the ways to solve this question. I believe that we should actually push school managers to turn back to physical education as an equal subject, and sometimes we need your help from the outside so that we can work well. And now the summary. Well, I'm delighted that this discussion has given such a result. Simona, I am delighted to get to know you, and we will probably get together a number of times later to discuss things and to continue this discussion. This is a big step forward, and this cooperation, I believe, will bear results, and with joint effort we will be able to implement that. Almost 2,000 physical activity subjects, promoters, participants have been listening to us, and they will probably promote this idea as well. Thank you for a very nice active discussion. I'm so delighted that we are not arguing, because although some receive experience higher pressure, but of course the most important, the biggest significance in life is what we do for others. It's not because of our direct positions, functions, but because we help others find the colleagues and colleagues' attitudes and efforts which are favorable for them, and we are trying to make sure that the ministries and establishments work for the benefit of the welfare of everyone in Lithuania. Thank you very much for sending your questions, listening to us, and let's hope that we will be moving forward, will no longer be standing. And of course some countries maybe have a higher pace than us, but let's look at our possibilities, not the reasons that stop us, prevent us from doing something. Of course the showers are very, very important, but what can we do in order to have those showers in our establishments? I sometimes tell my students that you don't have to wait till you are told to do something. You just do it because the world is changing around yourself. And if you can change yourself and your small community, you will contribute to the country's changes. Therefore, we want to continue to do that. Thank you.